Okay, so we are live. Welcome to this week's installment of Startup Weekly. This week we are joined by Tony Malz, and Tony is the founder and CEO of Syzygy, a visual storytelling and e-portfolio platform for your professional brand. So Tony, very welcome to you and thanks for joining.
Thank you very much for having me, Gordon.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, my man. So can you maybe first dive into a little bit of background about yourself and maybe the motivating factors for creating Syzygy?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm born and raised in San Diego, a bachelor's and master's in finance, and I spent about 20 years of my first 20 years of my career in corporate, right? So I worked at big companies like Intuit and FICO, and I left FICO and I thought it would be pretty easy to get a job, right? So this was in 2019. The last time I had to look for a job was in 2002. And, back in 2002, they had something called a resume and something called job boards where you apply, right? And not much had changed in the 17 years, but there has been some HR technology that does resume scoring and all that stuff. So long story short is, I thought it'd be pretty easy to go out there and get a job. And I realized how difficult it was and how archaic it was. And I thought, hey, is there a way to kind of bring this into the digital age?
Awesome. Amazing. So based on that, okay, so you've basically taken something from your firsthand experience and began to tackle this issue that you experienced yourself and has given rise to what is now Syzygy. So can you maybe break down what the platform is itself and what you provide for your users?
Yeah, so let's kind of take where, the current state of the job application process, right? So everybody has a resume and everybody's using the same keywords in the same format, right?
Totally.
You apply to a job, a lot of times you don't hear back. Apply to hundreds of jobs, never hear back. You don't even know if they looked at your resume. Maybe you do make it to an interview and the interview is a little bit awkward, right? Because nobody trusts the resume to begin with. So, taking that kind of where it is now, I started looking at some of the digital transformations that have gone over the last, 15 to 20 years. So let's look at a few of them, right? So the first thing is pictures, right? Or your personal moments. People used to never take pictures except for on vacation or certain birthdays or holidays. And now they take pictures all the time. Well, let's take that to our professional moments, right? Our academic moments. We don't really capture those moments. So that was kind of one idea is how do we start getting people to capture their moments? Number two is iTunes, right? Playlist. I have different playlists or configure different playlists for my family versus my friends, right? But the resume is very hard to configure. So is there a way to kind of bring that capability where people can quickly configure a resume that really speaks to the targeted audience? The third thing is Netflix, right? Or video on demand. I remember the old days like a VHS tape trying to record or just cable, right? And that's kind of like attaching a document, right? A Word document or a PDF. How do we get people to be able to scream their professional brand to their audience and start getting analytics back on engagement, right? Did they look at it? What content were they looking at and all that stuff? So that was kind of the notion of what Syzygy does right now. Think about it is creating digital content or bringing those bullet points to life, quickly being able to select what content demonstrates your employable skills to that company, and then start getting analytics back on what content they're engaging in to kind of help you produce even better content going forward.
Awesome. So would it be fair to say then that you're trying to address some of the technological advances and give people a way to leverage that to, I guess, put their experience against it in the form of an e-portfolio and really express a more rich version of themselves to potential employers?
Yeah, exactly. So I always ask this is a great question, right? What year was the first resume written? You want to take a guess on that?
1905.
Yeah, you're about 400 years off. So 1482. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It still exists today, right? And it's still the piece of paper. And now what happens is more and more people are just looking the same, right? Everybody has great GPAs. Everybody has great work experience. Everybody writes Spearhead or, Drove or led and have that. So they all look the same. And what happens is when you apply to a job, the companies really have a lot of the empowerment, right? They force you onto this resume. They don't tell you if they even looked at it or anything. So how do we bring some of that empowerment on a candidate side? How can I create my own voice, my own story, be able to package it and start getting analytics back to me on engagement, right? There's a lot of resume writers out there. I went to them after I left my company, FICO, and their tips were to have my resume look like everybody else's, every other finance executive. And I go, wait, I want to stand out. So, that's what we're bringing, that ability is really a lot of empowerment to the candidate side for professionals and students to build their brand.
Yeah, amazing. So in light of that, do you see students and people typically in university as your main target market, an ideal customer, or are you also getting people who are already in professional working environments and they want to take a new spin on creating a resume or a portfolio?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, there's over 7 billion people in the world and 3 billion people working, right? So you can cast a pretty wide net on how many people are using a resume, but, it's harder to teach maybe people in my demographics, right, to start creating content and all that stuff. Some do. There's people definitely, in their mid-40s that are creating content on our platform. But, there's a famous quote I like. It's Ludwig von Mises. He goes, "It's always been the task of the new generation to provoke change," right? So really with Gen Z, right, they've grown up with social media. They feel like they're comfortable creating content and all that. So they're the ones that are really driving this change for us. Millions of them just had their internships canceled, right? Where they thought everything was perfect, right? Great GPA, great this, internship lined up, and then it just got canceled due to COVID. So they're driving a lot of this change for us. So that's, again, all demographics can do this, but if we had to look at it, it's been more of kind of the newer generation or the younger generation driving it.
Absolutely. And I think one trend or one thing that I've been seeing lately as well is with students just wanting to get more hands-on experience while they are in university, whether it's an internship or experience with a startup or a larger company. I think more and more people are looking to have extracurricular experience while they're going through the university experience. And I guess you're kind of really kind of getting into that demographic to really leverage that experience and allow them to showcase that to the world.
Yeah, and we're working right now with college career centers and students where they're starting to create content, videos, or blogs on some of their classwork, right? So what happens is when you graduate college, usually it just says a school, what you studied, and a GPA, right? But imagine if you started doing case studies or projects and you start creating 2, 3, 4-minute videos on those projects. So people have a better understanding. I come from a finance background, right? But a better understanding on valuation of stocks or financial statements, right? When you can actually talk to it. Same thing with internships, right? So a lot of students have internships. Hey, I worked at Deloitte or I worked at Syzygy, right? And it just has a couple bullet points. But imagine creating a video where you said, hey, instead of saying, hey, I'm skilled in Python, you actually show web scraping, right? Or UI, UX, or React, where you actually create a 3-4-minute video where you walk through, hey, I decided to put this button here, or this call to action over there, right? Or SEO and all that stuff. So it's really great because, again, it brings those bullet points to life. And they're able to demonstrate that to their, in an interview, right? That they have those skills through work sample.
Absolutely, yeah. So can you speak to maybe some of the challenges with getting people using your platform over the past 12 months, let's say? Because, I mean, for me, it seems to make sense that digitally native people would want to have something like this. But is there an initial friction with trying to convince people to do this? Or is it more that people in university are like, yeah, this totally makes sense?
Yeah. And, we started this company a year ago. We released our MVP in February. We had a beta in July. And now in September, we just released version 1, which is a really cool product, right? So that's kind of the product life cycle. But, the resume is over, like we said, 500 years old. But, we've been around long enough to know digital transformation or change in consumer behavior takes time, right? Netflix been around 15 years. A lot of people still have cable or even satellite TV. So, it does take time to make change. But what we're seeing is once they start creating content and it comes to life, it's great. Once they actually package that and they send it to companies and now get calls, interviews, and jobs, like we're working with IBM, Qualcomm, et cetera. And when you're able to finish that swing and see that you can stand out and get jobs, it starts kind of getting that flywheel effect. So, the challenges with anything in a digital transformation or changing consumer behavior, it does take time. But when you demonstrate kind of that carrot at the end of the stick, right, and try and make that stick as short as possible and that carrot as big as possible, it definitely helps. The good news is I can go talk to 100 people and say, how many of you love the resume? And you're lucky to get one hand, right? So it's not like, we're swimming upstream where people kind of like the current kind of paradigm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these things do take time, but I think, as you said, for people who've grown up with social media and these platforms, they're more native to wanting to produce content and make stuff in front of the camera. So I think it's a natural evolution, and I think you're in a good spot to continue to grow. Also, maybe in light of that, can you speak to some of the maybe the approaches that you've taken to growing the Syzygy brand over the past kind of 12 months, and maybe some of the broader approaches you've used to gain initial traction?
Yeah. So, signed the papers a year ago, right? And then really started getting kind of an MVP product in February. So you start saying, how do we start marketing and testing that? One thing is you come up with a really unique name, right? Syzygy kind of stands out. So when people see it, but the way, right now we have 5,000 users on our platform, which is really great. The way we've been able to do that, I think, is through a few avenues. One is, on social media, we're pretty active on social media, a lot of posts, a lot of demonstrating value. 2 is we have great brand awareness with like podcasts like these, or what we call Syzygy Talks, right? Where we get thought leaders on there, talk about kind of job searches and stuff like that. We're not always trying just to push the product. 3 is we've had students and this is going to be a big thing going for us, called like brand ambassadors, right? There's a lot of brand ambassadors, but instead of just having them have people sign up, we're actually having our brand ambassadors run workshops and helping students create videos or content that becomes marketable. So that's been really great as well. 4th of all, we help companies hire. So, companies like IBM, Qualcomm, Kung Fu Tea, others. So we're able to kind of get applications, have people create content if they haven't already, and then being able to present those to the company so they can make hiring decisions, right? So those have been fantastic ways to get 5,000.
Amazing. Yeah. Let's look at the company side of the equation, because you've mentioned you're working with people like IBM or Qualcomm, and maybe this ties into some of the macro trends again within the industry for hiring new grads or students. And I mean, what does it take on that side to convince businesses like that to take more of an approach to hiring with respect to like an e-portfolio or something like that? And I guess, like you said, change takes time, and particularly in larger organizations, I think people can be not skeptical, but sometimes a little bit reluctant to take on new ways of hiring or new ways of doing things.
Yeah. And the good thing is, like, ceteris paribus, all else being equal, right? People would rather see content than a resume, right? So 85% of resumes are misrepresented. Everybody knows they can't trust a resume. And what's really happened with COVID, right, is you have Zoom interviewing, which becomes really hard. You ask behavior questions or stuff like that. So the way we work with companies is using digital content that a applicant can prepare themselves to demonstrate their skills provides a better interview experience for both parties, right? So from the candidate side, when they send content over and then, Qualcomm or whoever says, come in for an interview, that person feels way more confident heading into an interview because they don't have to prove themselves from ground zero when they jump on Zoom, right? They've already kind of demonstrated some of the skill set that they have. On the kind of hiring manager side, and I ran big teams before, a lot of times you're just trying to see if what they say on the resume is even true, right? So you got to kind of test them a little bit. It's uncomfortable. You don't really have an idea of soft skills, right? So those basic behavior questions, like tell me about your biggest kind of challenge and how you overcame it. It doesn't really give you a great litmus test is that that person's going to be able to walk into a chief technology officer kind of and be able to support them from a business partner perspective, right? You're not able to kind of get that out of those questions. So from a hiring manager perspective, you have a better understanding of their aptitude, their soft skills. And at the end of the day, both parties can really focus more on culture fit, right? Instead of kind of quizzing on it. So that's where companies like it because they're able to provide a better interview experience for the candidate and they are able to make smarter hiring decisions.
Awesome. Yeah. I think it's like it's such a fresh approach, I guess, but it works on a practical level because a student's showcasing their practical experience and it's giving them the confidence to have that proof of work once they go into an employer to say, this is what I've done. This is the evidence and the process and here it is documented. So I think it's a great way to showcase it.
And, I even had it back when I was, part of my frustration before I started Syzygy, right, is I would have those bullet points. Someone would be like, hey, Tony Malz, led the finance transformation resulting in 25% revenue growth. So I would go into that interview, somebody would ask me that question and I'd have to explain that in 20 seconds. And that's tough to do, right? It's like a 5 or 10 minute kind of conversation there. And I have to say it better than the next person, right? Either, after me or the person before me. And it's really tough to do that. And, sometimes I'm would head into an interview and the HR person wouldn't even know what like ARR is or anything like that, right? So for me to be, or anybody to be able to create videos to demonstrate that you have that knowledge or skill set, be able to send it to the hiring manager for them to be able to see it, is so much better than trying to prove it in a 20-second answer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So having been in this space very deeply over the past year or so, and obviously prior to that too, what pieces of advice would you relay onto students who are looking to build their portfolio as they move through, let's say, a university setting?
Yeah, so, when we... so heading into about early March, we thought we'd have 2 to 3 interns at this company. Okay. And then COVID hit and so many internships got rescinded. We had over 4,000 applications. Okay.
Wow.
And I looked at all of them and everybody's resume looked the same. Okay. Everybody had great GPA. Everybody's done extracurricular activities and many have done kind of internships previously. So what's happening is everybody looks the same and it becomes really tough to make decisions on who to select and how to hire. So my advice to students is start capturing and creating digital content of your classes and your internships, right? So that's a big one because if somebody actually prepared kind of content for me and an intro video on why they're passionate about Syzygy and our mission, I am just going to be drawn to that, right? Naturally versus someone just clicked easy apply with the standard resume. I mean, that's just how it is, right? So that is a huge thing for me with students is I know it's it's like the Instagram thing we talked about previously, right? Start capture, store it on your private Syzygy site. Nobody can see it, right? And then when you're ready to start looking for jobs, you can actually select which content and maybe create a great introductory video instead of a cover letter about the company's mission, right? And why you want to work there. So that's number one. Number two is, something like LinkedIn, right? It has 700 million professionals on it. And I receive probably 10 to 20 messages from students a day saying, hey, Tony, do you have any internships? Do any of your clients have internships? Whatever. Everything's at the point of kind of need, right? What I would advise students is to start looking at what companies you might want to work at. Start looking at who are in those kind of roles, like manager roles or whatever. Try and start following them on LinkedIn and engaging in their content, right? If they put up a post, start putting, oh, that's a great post and stuff like that. Start building a a kind of a reputation so they know who you are. And then maybe months down the road, that will start opening a great way to kind of introduce yourself in looking for an opportunity. It's very hard when everything's like, hey, are you guys hiring? Are you guys hiring? Are you guys hiring? It's, you know, a lot of people aren't going to respond to that.
For sure. Yeah. Great pieces of advice. I think on a practical level, going that extra mile to stand out with something is definitely worth the effort, and putting in the work up front to kind of showcase yourself and your experience. So yeah, I love that. So I guess you mentioned about having released the newest version of Syzygy just recently, and I guess you're moving into a phase where you're hoping to be, I guess, growing rapidly in the next while. So how are you thinking about scaling as you move into this new phase, I guess, from the top down, from the man himself?
Yeah. And you know, you've been around startup land, right? First thing is trying to get product market fit. We think, you know, that's always you got to figure out, right? But we think we're pretty close on there. What we're doing here, right? We're allowing people to bring their bullet points to life, being able to quickly configure kind of these e-portfolios and start getting engagement on our analytics on engagement, right? So we feel like we're getting pretty good there. So, you know, step 2 is how do you get kind of a repeatable, scalable sales motion, right? So there's always kind of the direct channel, one by one, people sign up, right? And we're doing that through social. We're doing that through general brand awareness, Syzygy talks, member referrals, and stuff like that. But, you know, we're really good specialists through partnerships, right? So there's really kind of 5 kind of partnership personas right now that we've defined and we'll start executing on, and we'll see how they'll go. The first one is college career centers, right? At the end of the day, they want to help their students get jobs. And right now, a lot of times what they're teaching are really 2 things. Is one, go create a LinkedIn profile. That's about it, right? And that's basically a resume, right? And 2 is a writing class, basically. So we're having conversations already with 15 to 20 college career centers where we're asking them to help their students create content, and we're helping staff that with ambassadors as well. How do we help your students start creating content? Why? They become marketable to get internships and jobs. Secondly is when they leave college, you know, 5 years later, 10 years later, or 20 years later, like me, if they actually have content there on their site, they're going to feel a lot closer to their college, right? So we call that kind of reflection, right? They'll become better alumni, et cetera. So, you know, the College Career Center is one of our partnerships we're looking at. Number 2 is courses or certifications. So a lot of people go and get a certificate, right? Hey, I just got certified in HubSpot, or I just got certified in React, right? And those certifications are great, but imagine if you created kind of videos or content around that on what you actually learned, not just the certificate itself. So, you know, that's a kind of a great partnership strategy for us as well, is working with them, these courses to start creating videos for their students, start putting on their Syzygy site, and then being able to use that as part of their application. And when people are getting jobs because of their certification, right, that helps that program stand out. Number 3 is job boards. You know, trying to get someone like LinkedIn, Indeed, you know, Monster, et cetera, to be able to not just say put any link onto an application, but really your Syzygy e-portfolio link. And we believe it will help people stand out and have a better chance to get to the interview, right? And also get that candidate the ability to get analytics back on if it was even seen. Number 4 is that interview stage, right, that we talked about. The interview experience is so much better for both the candidate and the hiring manager. So there's these application tracking systems where 99% of large companies have them. So how do we get our technology deployed there where perhaps companies would want to use our module maybe at the time of interview, right? A hiring manager could say, hey, I would love for you to create some content around these 2 or 3 topics. Please send it to us 24 hours in advance of the interview. Then you know, the person creates it, they send it over. The hiring manager is able to see it before the interview, and both people are much happier about that process. And number 5 is staffing agencies. So staffing agencies is a $500 billion market worldwide. Staffing agencies help companies find talent, right? And place them. So this obviously, if staffing agencies are able to find candidates, put together a nice kind of e-portfolio and present that to the companies, it's going to be much better than just a resume with some notes. So those are kind of our first 5 kind of partnership channels that we're going to go execute on here very shortly.
Amazing. You've got plenty to keep you busy over the next short while then, no doubt.
Yeah.
Amazing. So can you maybe touch on, like, what is it that you love most about the entrepreneurial journey so far with building Syzygy and your own entrepreneurial pursuits?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I worked 19 years in corporate America, probably 15 years at, billion plus companies, right? And even though they're big, a lot of times it still felt small, right? Also, we'll launch a new product, so you feel really kind of tied into that. So you had that aspect, or you go into a different country, like at FICO, I led kind of FICO going into China in like 05, 06, or Brazil or South Africa. So those are always fun as well, right? But entrepreneurship's definitely different because right now bootstrapped, right? So you're actually using your own cash, right, to kind of burn through, which is hard. So there's a lot more on the line. You can't really make mistakes, right? You don't have that $1 billion of revenue to cover any mistakes. You gotta execute at a high level. There's brand awareness, trying to get your name out there. I think it is a bit of a tough journey, right? Because sometimes you get a lot of momentum, you get confidence, but sometimes there's those down kind of turns as well, right? And it's, you have to have a good support system as well. So I think for me on entrepreneurship, I've always felt like I've kind of led at companies and led cool things. But the biggest difference for me is there's a lot more on the line, right? With the money, putting money in. I'm 45, so I'm really at that sweet spot of earnings power. So there's an opportunity cost of doing that. I think it's really cool when you have people that you hire. I have a great team here, and they're really passionate about your cause, where sometimes when you have these big companies, people are just hired and maybe they're not so passionate about the company's mission, right? So that's been great as well.
Amazing. Yeah. So I know you said there's ups and downs as part of the entrepreneurial journey, and I think most people building a business will resonate with that. So what would be maybe some of your biggest lessons learned over the past while of building Syzygy?
Yeah, so started in September, and the first probably mistake I did was try and use some of my friends who had full-time jobs that were going to moonlight and help build the software. Okay, and it was really hard. I've done a lot of things, but I've never managed kind of a development team, right? And they were friends and they were making great money during the day, and this was just kind of like hourly wages. So they started maybe in September. By the time like late October, early November came, a month and a half into it, I just got a little nervous, right? So one of the things I did is then opened up a chief technology officer role. Received 800 applicants and made a great decision. But I guess the lesson learned there is I was really nervous starting this company off with maybe people I didn't trust, right? And what it did is it cost me because I went to people I kind of trust or knew, but they were moonlighting. I wish I would have maybe 2 months earlier or right from the start just put that job posting out for a chief technology officer role. But I guess the good part of it is, I was able to get an amazing chief technology officer person, right? Who knows 2 months before that if it would have happened. So the lesson learned there is, hey, put the job out there, really try and find the best talent more than just a personal connection, and fail fast. I did fail fast there. I quickly pivoted into a different development team. So that was one lesson learned. I think another lesson, I wouldn't say lesson learned, but maybe something I'm really happy about is, once we released our MVP in February, we built 100K a pipeline in 6 weeks, which was great. Wow. And then COVID hit, right? Yeah. And which was tough. And we had 100K a pipeline, meaning helping companies kind of hire using our technology got wiped away. And, you saw these companies kind of doing layoffs or doing whatever. And, I'm a big believer. when people zig, I zag, right? So my first job in 2000 was at the stock market, the dot-com bubble. 2008 was at FICO, where they sell into banks with financial crisis. And what I've learned is don't just follow everybody and try and, reduce staff or close shop. Just stay strong and persistent. And what happened through COVID over the next following few months is we got really stronger. So I think, even though it's not a lesson learned, it's one that I like to share, is sometimes you got to kind of ignore the noise of the macroeconomics and just kind of focus on executing on the company.
Yeah. Oh, great words of advice. And I think there's genuinely a huge amount of opportunity in the digital sphere right now, despite the macroeconomic climate that might be going on around us. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity to be capitalized on, and yeah, I think a lot of people will look back on this time as something where there was a lot of actual innovation birthed from, So awesome answer, thank you. So what's next for Syzygy, Tony, on the immediate future, and what's next?
Yeah, so as we look over the next year, first thing what's going on right now is we just released our version 1, right? So that's going well. Right now, looking to fundraise. So starting those talks, which is fantastic, because we feel like we have product market fit, and now it's time to go pour some gasoline on the fire. So that's what's next for us. We believe over the next 12 months, we'll grow this company to let's say a 15-person company from 4. We believe we'll go from 5,000 users to well over 100,000 users. We believe we'll have a lot on the technology front. We really want to build the best experience ever, right? Every day wake up, how do we focus on customer experience and really build out that best portfolio platform with enablement. There's also some cool other features we have, that we want to deliver on over the next 6 to 12 months that we think will make our platform much more than just an e-portfolio platform.
Amazing. Well, if anyone wants to find out more about Syzygy, they can go to joinsyzygy.com. Tony, it was a pleasure to have you on the line and chat about all things Syzygy and the current climate with everything in the e-portfolio world and jobs. So thank you very much for joining us. I wish you the very best with everything in the near future. And yeah, thank you again.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Gordon. This was fantastic.
Amazing. Thanks, my man. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for your support.